But as a historian, the world is really in turmoil. I think today, perhaps more than any other time. How do you see the expansionist impulse? I mean, you've written about emperors and invaders. You have a very deep sense of history and a sense of why expansion happens, what invaders do, what's the impulse. So how do you see, in some senses, Trump's regime ruling?
Well, speaking very much personally, not as a director of the festival, empires rise and fall, and periods when everything seems to be very calm and the waters are still in the lake are often the times when trouble is brewing. I direct a podcast called the Empire Pod, and our subject is the rise and fall of empires. And while this festival was going on, we were recording for the Empire Pod a series on something called the Bronze Age collapse. And it's this extraordinary moment in antiquity when all the empires around the Mediterranean, Mycenae, Troy, the Hittites, the city-states down the eastern coast of the Levant, all in a period of just maybe a decade and a half, these mighty empires that have been clashing against each other and rumbling around for thousands of years collapse in as little as 2 decades. And so I think we've got to be aware that history that tells us that things are very unstable, and you never quite know when the trouble will come. And it's like, the famous story of the butterfly flapping its wings and creating a storm in some other part of the globe. And I think definitely the period of stability in Europe that we've seen since the end of the Second World War, and even more so since the fall of the Berlin Wall, is definitely now drawing to a close. I am no fan of Donald Trump. I think very few people outside the Republican Party anywhere in the world are fans of Donald Trump. And it's slightly like one of those sort of fairy tale stories where a mad king is sort of sitting, thumping the table. There are many parallels to people like Trump in history.
Historically, who would you compare him to?
Henry VIII is somebody, a bit like that. Henry VIII is perhaps slightly more responsible than Trump, but and so perhaps better educated. But you do get these figures with enormous, fragile egos rising to positions of power. This is common throughout history, and they can behave extremely erratically, and particularly if they're surrounded only by sycophants and only are told what they want to hear and enclose themselves in their own little bubble, they behave very erratically. I think what he's doing with Greenland, with Venezuela, and with Gaza is extremely dangerous for world peace. There's absolutely no doubt that just unilaterally going without even approaching Congress and kidnapping the president of another country, however rotten that president is, to threaten allies of 50, even 100 years standing with tariffs because they won't hand over a sovereign territory. This is close. This is beyond parodies, but to the point of madness. And all my educated liberal American friends roll their eyes and feel the shame of this madman running the show. And then we have obviously a very dangerous period in history when China is on the rise, and all the systems that mankind has built to contain violence, to limit war, to promote human rights. These are threatened by actions such as these. And if we enter a world where dog can just eat dog, which is actually the norm during history, and we hope that we'd evolved out of this and created institutions like the United Nations, like the statutes of human rights, international law. These are things that limit arbitrary, whimsical banging on the table by rulers who are not constrained by democracy or law.
And they're forming their own peace club and inviting the other countries to be part of it.
And Gaza is a more catastrophic case still, where how can we, 75 years after India won its independence, initiating the whole post-colonial period, how come the Palestinians can just be treated like savages who do not deserve representation and the right of self-determination like any other people on earth? India has led the way with recognizing the Palestinian state many years ago. And India has a very good record with looking after the rights of the Palestinians. My own country, Britain, has a terrible record and is responsible for this mess in the first place.